I am Liam, 31 years old, and at my stepbrother's extremely luxurious rehearsal dinner, he decided it would be a funny, audience-pleasing prank to present me to 120 elite guests as merely a nurse. While I sat there, enduring the deepest humiliation from the same family that had deliberately removed me from their lives for more than 20 years, my own father joined in the laughter. He actually tilted his head back and laughed openly at my cost in front of a grand ballroom packed with influential real estate tycoons, top corporate leaders, and millionaires. My stepmother simply smiled smugly, lifting her crystal champagne glass and taking a sip of her costly drink, as if she had finally triumphed in a 2-decade mental battle against me. But there was one crucial detail they were completely unaware of. The bride's billionaire father, the influential man paying for this whole extravagant event, suddenly froze in place. He did not laugh, he did not even smile slightly. Instead, he gazed straight at a small, inexpensive pin on my dark jacket. He understood precisely who I was in that instant, and the hidden truth from my past was about to shatter my stepbrother's false, carefully built world. And right now, today, the same people who mocked me are dealing with a huge legal case, public disgrace, and are pleading for my mercy every single day. Before I reveal exactly what occurred and how everything reversed in the most deeply satisfying manner possible, do me a small favor. Tap that like button immediately if you strongly believe that karma always comes to claim what is owed. And please, remember to tell me in the comments where you are viewing this from. I enjoy seeing how widely these real accounts of justice actually spread. Now, let's return to the precise moment this public ordeal started. I was seated at table 14 inside the Oakmont Country Club. If you have ever attended a fancy, private country club gathering, you know exactly what table 14 represents. It is the table they intentionally squeeze right beside the kitchen's swinging doors. It is the darkest, most hidden spot in the entire space. It is the assigned area where they conceal the individuals they are required to include for legal or social reasons, but truly do not want anyone to notice. Every 30 seconds, a hurried server balancing a large, weighty tray of dirty dishes and leftover crab cakes would roughly knock against the back of my wooden seat. I was placed beside a disinterested young babysitter named Sarah, who spent the whole night scrolling endlessly on her phone. A far-off relative who kept loudly griping about the air conditioning being too chilly, and one vacant chair. I was not present as a valued guest. I was there simply to be noted. I was there to tick a box so my stepbrother, Julian, could successfully act as the kind, welcoming, devoted family figure for his rich new relatives. I sat there in my dark gray suit. It was the only suit I possessed, purchased straight from the store 3 years earlier for a hospital fundraising event. The ballroom looked breathtaking, almost overwhelming with its display of riches. Massive crystal chandeliers cast small, colorful patterns across the high, decorated ceiling. Women dressed in custom Valentino gowns and men in flawlessly fitted tuxedos enjoyed aged champagne that cost more than my weekly earnings in the hospital emergency unit. The atmosphere in the room carried scents of roasted filet mignon, costly cedarwood cologne, and wealth. Pure, inherited, unreachable wealth. On the main platform, illuminated by a warm, high-priced spotlight, stood Julian. He held a heavy crystal microphone and wore that smooth, deeply arrogant grin he had practiced for 34 years in front of mirrors. He was marrying Clara Sterling, the only daughter of Arthur Sterling. Arthur was a self-made commercial real estate billionaire who essentially controlled half the business properties across our entire state. Julian had spent the previous 2 years building a perfect, entirely made-up picture of our family to show the Sterlings, and tonight was meant to be his greatest achievement. He began his speech by complimenting his mother, Eleanor, my stepmother. He described her as his foundation. He called her the person who taught him sophistication, strength, and poise. Eleanor sat at the main head table, wearing a designer gown that cost more than my vehicle, placing a perfectly groomed hand on her chest. She shut her eyes, absorbing the courteous clapping as if receiving a prestigious award. Then Julian turned toward my father, Marcus. Julian labeled him a hero. He told the group of influential people that Marcus was the one who had stepped forward and demonstrated what a true, committed father looked like. He talked about honesty and dedication. My dad actually lifted his glass of scotch, his eyes gleaming with real tears of pride. He gazed up at Julian with a kind of pure, complete admiration I had not witnessed aimed at me since I was a young child playing outside. Then Julian's eyes gradually swept across the huge room. He looked beyond the prosperous property developers, beyond the senior partners at his corporate law office, and his stare settled directly on the shadowed area where I sat. A familiar, harsh smirk appeared at the edge of his mouth. He moved closer to the microphone. The extended silence he held was fully intentional, skillfully planned to ensure every person in the room paid attention to his following statement. And over there, far in the rear, Julian said, his voice ringing clearly through the powerful speakers, "That is my stepbrother, Liam. He is just a nurse." He uttered the word nurse in exactly the same tone one might use for an ugly mark on a clean carpet or an embarrassing, regrettable flaw. It was delivered as a public excuse. It was shown as a letdown the family courageously and kindly accepted. The room fell completely silent for a brief moment, and then the sound that will remain in my mind for the rest of my life sliced through the quiet. My dad laughed. It was not an uneasy chuckle to ease the uncomfortable atmosphere. It was a loud, authentic, deep laugh. He found my public embarrassment truly amusing. Eleanor smiled from the head table, raising her glass to her mouth to conceal her great pleasure, her eyes meeting mine with total, open hostility. A wave of courteous laughter then spread among the wealthy attendees. When the groom laughs, the crowd naturally joins. 120 people were staring straight at me, laughing at my misfortune. My hands rested in my lap. I kept sliding my thumb across the small pearl pin fastened to my jacket. It was a part of my late mother's earring, remade by an affordable jeweler nearby so I could keep a small reminder of her with me on meaningful occasions. I clutched my water glass under the table so firmly I truly believed the solid crystal might break in my grip and cut my hand. My jaw tightened completely. The muscles in my neck grew rigid. I applied the same breathing methods I use in the hospital emergency area when a patient is in crisis and the monitors are sounding loudly. Breathe in for seconds, breathe out for seconds. I did not rise. I did not leave the room angrily. I endured the painful humiliation just as I had accepted every other insult, every other dismissal, and every other harshness for the last 20 years. But as the laughter eventually faded and the jazz band began a gentle melody once more, I observed something entirely unusual. At the main head table, one man alone was not laughing. Arthur Sterling, the billionaire father of the bride, remained motionless like a statue. His costly champagne glass sat completely ignored on the table before him. He was looking directly at me. His eyes were open wide, fixed on my face, and then moving slowly down to the small pearl pin shining faintly against my dark jacket. His mouth was slightly parted. He leaned toward his wife, Victoria, and whispered something so intensely that she quickly turned her head to stare at me as well. I had no idea yet, sitting there in the shadows, but the connections were quickly forming in his sharp, strategic mind. I believed I was only enduring another unpleasant evening of regular family mistreatment. I was completely mistaken. The trouble was already gathering right over their heads. To completely grasp how we reached this cold, embarrassing instant in the ballroom, and exactly why Arthur Sterling was watching me as if he had just witnessed a ghost emerge from the grave. I must go back. You need to know the deep, decaying structure of my family's deceptions. I was exactly 9 years old when my mother's funeral happened. I still recall the harsh, stinging chill of the rain on that particular day. I remember the strong scent of damp soil and the dark, shiny wood of the casket being slowly lowered into the earth. My dad, Marcus, gripped my hand so firmly it actually pained my small fingers. Standing there in my baggy, inexpensive black suit, trembling in the breeze, I looked up at him and believed it was only the two of us facing the harsh world. I strongly felt our common, terrible sorrow would unite us permanently. I believed he would always shield me. But less than 1 year afterward, Eleanor entered our peaceful suburban house with her 12-year-old son, Julian, and the entire base of my life totally fell apart. Julian was the favored child from the start. He was noisy, entitled, highly athletic, and he had a natural, frightening skill to understand exactly how to use my father's strong desire for calm. Billionaire quickly started redesigning our home and our daily lives, methodically removing my mother's memory from every room and every surface. My childhood bedroom, the one my mom had spent a whole weekend painting a gentle, soothing blue before she became ill, was turned into Julian's personal workspace. I was quickly moved to the small, chilly spare room down the corridor near the loud heating system. The pictures on the main staircase changed swiftly from natural family shots of me and my mom smiling at the beach to expensive, professionally lit images of Julian playing lacrosse and dressed in costly private school outfits. I remember one particular evening, sitting on the upper step of the carpeted stairs, completely hidden in the darkness. I heard Alina's older sister, Aunt Sylvia, standing in the entrance hall below. She was drinking iced tea and speaking quietly to Alina. "You have to create total control early," Sylvia said coldly. "Marcus is weak. He dislikes arguments. If you don't move the boy out of attention right now, he's going to remain an obstacle in your new marriage. Make him invisible, Alina. Make Julian the focus of everything." And that is precisely what they did. Over the following years, I became a true ghost in my own home. I learned to walk across the wooden floors without creating any noise. I learned to finish my meals fast and quietly and return to my chilly room before Julian could start an argument that Marcus would automatically blame on me just to satisfy Alina. But the greatest betrayal, the key event that destroyed my bond with my father forever and showed I held no value to him, arrived when I was preparing for university. Before my mother died, she had taken extra work and created a modest, specific college savings account just for me. It was not a huge sum by any standard, but it was sufficient to pay for tuition at a respectable state college, so I would not finish buried in debt. It was her last present to guarantee I had a secure path ahead. When I turned 18, I walked confidently into our neighborhood bank to officially move the account into my own name. I gave my driver's license to the clerk. She typed on her computer, frowned heavily, and printed a document. The account was almost empty. There was less than $200 remaining. I drove my old car home so quickly I hardly remember the journey. My heart was racing wildly. I faced Marcus in the kitchen that evening. The house was silent. Alina and Julian were out buying costly items for Julian's new college living space. I slapped the printed bank document onto the granite surface. I was trembling with rage, fear, and a powerful feeling of despair. Marcus avoided looking me in the eyes. He rubbed his face roughly with his hands, leaning heavily against the metal sink. He would not even stand upright. He muttered, staring at the ground, that he had needed to use my entire college savings to cover Julian's private university fees. "Julian is going to be a highly successful lawyer," Liam, my dad, said, strongly justifying his clear theft as if it were a worthy choice. "He needs the status. He needs the proper network. You are only entering nursing. You can simply obtain student loans for a state school. If I don't cover Julian's expensive education, Alina will definitely seek divorce. I cannot handle a divorce at this time. It will wreck my retirement savings and ruin my future plans. She will claim half of everything, including this house. You must see my situation." I understood completely. I was the monetary and emotional offering. To maintain his comfortable, pretend marriage and safeguard his own resources, my father had deliberately taken the final piece of security my deceased mother had provided me. He selected his new wife's son over his own blood to escape a legal problem. That was the defining instant of my whole life. That was the exact moment I realized I was fully alone in this world. I did not yell. I did not smash plates against the wall like Julian would have. I simply walked to my room, packed 2 bags with my belongings, left through the front door, and never returned. The next 10 years were a harsh, tiring struggle. I took on heavy student debts that disturbed my sleep. I worked tough late-night hours at a cheap 24-hour diner just to afford rent for a poor apartment. I survived on quick noodles, inexpensive coffee, and struggled hard to earn my nursing qualification. I intentionally chose trauma nursing because I wanted to be the one who helped when people's lives were suddenly breaking down. I wanted to be the calm support in total disorder. Over the following 10 years, I created a life I was truly proud of, fully separate from their harmful influence. I handled my own expenses. I saved lives in the emergency department. I endured. and I honestly believed I had managed to move on from them. I thought the emotional tie was broken until the elegant gold-embossed envelope appeared in my mailbox. I thought the past was solidly hidden, but the true ordeal, the final confrontation, had not even started. Fast forward to exactly 3 weeks before the wedding. The fancy invitation arrived on a dark, wet Tuesday afternoon. It was stuffed forcefully in my small apartment mailbox between an overdue electricity bill and a low-cost supermarket advertisement. I clearly remember standing in my tiny, old-fashioned kitchen, my feet hurting badly from a demanding 12-hour shift in the ER. I still carried the strong smell of hospital cleaner, sterile gloves, and old break-room coffee. I stared at the thick, cream-colored envelope on my counter. It was heavy, high-quality paper, decorated with stylish, costly gold foil writing. I carefully slipped my thumb under the wax seal. Inside, the skilled calligrapher had written my name. They spelled it incorrectly. My own family could not even bother to write my first name properly on stationery that probably cost over $1,000. Moreover, there was no +1 choice selected on the RSVP card. It was not an invitation to enjoy our family uniting. It was a firm order. They required me in the background to finish the overall image, but they wanted to ensure I occupied as little room as possible. Looking at that card, the heavy, choking burden of 20 years returned straight to my chest. I instantly tossed the invitation into the trash bin beside the refrigerator. I did not need their poisonous show in my calm life, but exactly 2 hours later, my phone vibrated on the counter. The caller ID simply read Marcus. I answered it, watching the rain strike the window. Hello. Hey, Liam. His voice sounded loudly through the speaker, excessively upbeat and clearly insincere. It was the same tone he used when Alina or Julian was nearby listening to his part of the talk. Did you receive the invite in the mail today? I got it, I said plainly, refusing to participate. They spelled my name wrong, and I have to work a double shift at the hospital that weekend anyway. His tone immediately lost the false, happy energy, turning firm, icy, and very impatient. Look, Liam, do not do this to me right now. Julian is marrying into the Sterlings. The Sterlings. This is a huge opportunity for our family's future. His new promotion to junior partner at the corporate law office relies completely on this connection. The firm is attempting to obtain Arthur Sterling's property business. Do not destroy your stepbrother's important day by acting like a victim and refusing to appear. Alina has been extremely anxious planning this occasion with Victoria Sterling. Just wear a suit, sit where you are directed and smile. It is not that difficult, he ordered, treating me like an unruly worker. Dad, I am not family to them, I answered, staring at the flaking paint on my kitchen cupboards. I am a prop. I am just a box to mark. Stop being overly emotional. I do not want to hear it. Be at the rehearsal dinner and be at the wedding. End of discussion. He ended the call before I could speak another word. That night, sitting on my old living room couch, I opened Instagram on my phone. Julian had blocked me from his private accounts years earlier, but his public professional page, the one he used for business connections, was fully accessible. I began browsing through his feed. Julian had created an absolute, frightening work of fiction. There were beautifully edited pictures of him, Alina and Marcus at upscale steakhouses, standing on rented sailboats wearing linen shirts and posing at local charity events. I was not in any single picture. It was as if I had never existed. The captions said things like, "Nothing matters more than my blood. Family is everything, built on a foundation of trust." But the deceptions went far beyond a few selected photos. In a recent video interview he shared for a local business publication, he stated my dad was a retired senior executive in the corporate hardware sector. My dad managed a local franchised hardware store off the interstate highway. He described Alina as a former event planning executive who had retired to dedicate herself to charitable causes. She used to prepare low-cost tray cakes for local community meetings and grumble about the residents nearby. Julian had totally recreated our family background to win over Arthur Sterling, covering the damaged, rotting foundation with a new layer of shiny, premium coating. I understood then precisely why I was being pushed into the obscure spots. I represented a major risk to this invented tale. A trauma nurse handling extra shifts, driving an old vehicle, and battling to repay education debts, did not match the wealthy image he was strongly promoting to his future father-in-law. If Arthur Sterling began inquiring with me about my dad's executive background, the whole fragile setup would crumble at once. The first part of this ordeal was a required Sunday morning meal at the Sterling property, the week before the ceremony. I arrived at the large metal entrance in my decade-old Honda Civic. The parking attendant, a young man in a neat outfit, viewed my vehicle as if it were a moving waste bin. He purposely placed it right between a spotless black Rolls-Royce and a shiny silver Porsche 911. The difference in appearance was nearly humorous. The Sterling property was stunning. Rock columns, neatly shaped bushes cut with exact patterns, and a wooden double entrance that seemed taken from a grand European palace. I entered, attempting hard to flatten the creases in my single formal shirt. The residence carried scents of new flowers, imported polish, and inherited riches. Servers moved quietly over the imported stone surfaces, holding metal platters of fine fish eggs, cured fish, and premium champagne. I instantly sensed the usual, overwhelming feeling of turning totally unnoticed. I took a glass of fizzy water from a moving tray and sought a silent spot away from Alina's sharp, resentful stares. I moved along a lengthy, peaceful corridor decorated with valuable original paintings, simply searching for a visitor restroom so I could conceal myself for 20 minutes. I went by an unlocked entrance that opened into a huge wooden office. I cannot explain why I paused. Perhaps it was the room's enormous scale, or the surfaces covered with notable property honors and recognitions. But as I peeked within, an item on the central shelf drew my attention. It was a bordered image placed beside a fastened, protected news clipping. I stepped softly into the space for a better view. The title from a 3-year-old publication stated, "Local entrepreneur survives terrible road accident due to nurse not on duty." Beside it was a very detailed picture of a man in a medical bed. His features were badly swollen, nearly impossible to identify. A sturdy neck brace was secured firmly around his throat, and breathing lines were fastened tightly to his nostrils. My heart performed an odd, forceful jump in my chest. The air inside the space suddenly seemed extremely limited. 3 years earlier, on a cold November evening, I was heading home by myself on Interstate 95 following a tough, draining extended shift in the emergency section. It was raining heavily. Sight was almost nothing, the window cleaners fighting to handle the downpour. Suddenly, the wheels of a large transport vehicle seized about 100 yards in front of me, and the truck sharply turned sideways across 3 traffic paths, obstructing the full roadway. A dark luxury vehicle, unable to halt in time on the slippery surface, collided directly into the trailer's side with a horrible, loud sound of ripping steel. I had quickly steered my car to the side, seized my urgent medical bag from the back, and ran through the icy rain and broken glass scattered on the pavement. The operator of the vehicle was trapped harshly under the damaged wheel area. Blood flowed strongly from a serious cut on his brow, fully covering his vision. I climbed into the bent, rough debris, disregarding the pointed steel tearing my uniform and injuring my limbs. For 47 painful minutes, while we remained in the icy rain awaiting the emergency teams to bring the powerful extraction tools, I kept his neck spine totally steady with my bare, chilled hands. If he shifted even slightly, he would have lost movement from the neck downward. I spoke to him steadily so he would not lose consciousness from the intense trauma and blood reduction. I mentioned my mom. I mentioned her pearl jewelry, how they shone in the illumination, how I carried a portion of them with me. Anything to hold his thoughts connected to the living realm, while his form was attempting to fail. I never learned his identity amid the disorder, and I departed the medical center to rest at home before he recovered from his urgent operation. I examined the bordered image on the shelf in the wealthy man's office more carefully. The puffed, injured features, the schedule, the place. Could this be Arthur Sterling? Before my thoughts could completely handle the enormous scale of what I was seeing, a strong grip seized my shoulder like a clamp. "What exactly are you doing in this area?" I turned rapidly. Julian was positioned in the entrance, his expression distorted in real, uncontrolled anger. He pulled me by the limb, pressing his premium gold timepiece into my wrist, hauling me forcefully from the office and into the corridor. This is Mr. Sterling's personal workspace, Julian whispered poisonously, pushing me firmly against the corridor surface. You do not simply roam through others' residences. Goodness, you are so thoroughly humiliating. Remain hidden and cease prying. You are fortunate to even inhale the atmosphere in this residence. Go position yourself in the edge until departure time. He did not await my reply. He forcefully adjusted his high-end silk necktie, turned away from me, and returned toward the amusement and the ringing glasses of the gathering, promptly restoring his false, charming, ideal son expression for the attendees. I remained in the corridor, my heart beating strongly against my chest. The picture of that medical bed was permanently marked in my thoughts. I moved gradually out to the rear outdoor area, where the primary meal was occurring beneath a large white canopy. Julian was commanding attention near the outside serving station, his arm wrapped closely around Clara's midsection, laughing strongly at a remark, requiring a desperate pause to inhale and handle the discovery. I moved away from the main group and ascended to a second-level rock terrace that viewed the wide flower beds. It was utterly peaceful there. I rested against the cool stone barrier, allowing the fresh wind to touch my reddened face. Below me, tucked into a small, concealed nook protected by the tall bushes, stood Brendan, one of Julian's wedding attendants. He was sipping a mixed drink and speaking softly to a wedding companion in a rose-colored outfit. They were fully concealed from the primary event, and their words carried clearly up to the terrace where I stood. Where is the stepbrother located anyway? The wedding companion inquired lightly, mixing her beverage. I have not spotted him all day. Is he present even? Oh, the nurse individual. Brendan laughed gently, a mean, ridiculing noise. Julian mentions they attempt to keep him distant from large groups. Evidently, the guy has serious temper control difficulties, like actual psychological conditions, schizophrenia or similar. Julian informed Mr. Sterling that the family had to separate him financially years back because he was so erratic and likely to abrupt aggression. They feared for their well-being. Tragic, truly. Julian behaved so remarkably courageous regarding it, choosing the noble path and still including him in the ceremony just to be kind. I ceased breathing altogether. The stone barrier beneath my palms felt like frozen blocks. My sight narrowed. Psychological conditions, temper difficulties, erratic, likely to aggression. Julian had not merely concealed me. He had purposefully, harmfully ruined my reputation to the Sterling relatives. He had depicted me as a psychologically erratic, aggressive outcast to guarantee they would never, ever inquire why I was absent from his ideal family image, or why I lacked a financial inheritance. He fully invented a serious psychological disorder to mask his own harshness and his father's monetary theft. He turned me into a villain so he could act as the sufferer. I removed my phone from my pocket. My hands trembled without control, shaking with a fury I had never experienced earlier. I called my father's number. I glanced down into the gathering and saw Marcus positioned near the fancy seafood display table. He took out his phone, viewed the display, exhaled deeply as if I were a great load, and stepped away from the group before responding. What is it, Liam? I am occupied speaking with significant individuals, he grumbled. Dad, I said. My voice trembled, but not from sorrow. It was pure, complete, freezing fury. I just listened to Brendan speaking in the garden. Did Julian inform the Sterlings that I have psychological health difficulties, that I am erratic and likely to aggression? Complete quiet on the connection. I stared down at the crown of my father's head in the garden beneath. He rubbed the rear of his neck, a tense routine he had when trapped in a large falsehood and cornered. Liam, lower your voice, my dad whispered urgently, checking around to check if anyone overheard. It is not a major issue. Julian simply required to clarify why you are not present often and why you live the way you do. It helps the family image. I hung up without another word. That single conversation confirmed everything. The storm clouds were now fully formed. The wedding day arrived, and the ceremony went ahead as planned. But during the reception, Arthur Sterling approached me privately in a quiet hallway. His voice was steady, but filled with emotion, as he recognized the pearl pin and connected every detail from that rainy night 3 years ago. He revealed I had saved his life that night, and without my quick actions, he would never have walked again, let alone built more of his empire. He thanked me deeply, then asked for the full truth about my family. I told him everything, the stolen fund, the lies, the character assassination. Arthur's face hardened like stone. Within days, the lawsuits began. Arthur withdrew all business dealings from Julian's law firm. Investigations uncovered financial irregularities tied to Julian's dealings, fueled by the false family narrative he had sold. My stepbrother's promotion vanished. Public articles exposed the fabricated stories. Eleanor's social circle turned against her. Marcus lost his standing in their community. They faced massive financial penalties, reputation destruction, and isolation. Now they call me daily, leaving messages begging for help to fix the mess, offering apologies that come far too late. I sit here today in my own peaceful apartment, still wearing the pearl pin, knowing that the tables turned completely. Karma did not just knock, it arrived with full force. Hit that like button if you believe justice finds its way. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I read every single one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a twist. Stay tuned to Reddit Tales Times for your daily dose of drama, laughs, and unbelievable stories.